report to this computer. Yeah, and so we're here today to talk about PAYS, or Pay As You Save. This is a program that is being facilitated by IEDA. So we've invited them to come on and talk about PAYS, and see if we can drum up some interest. Just at the top, I'll just say I think PAYS is a good program. I think for the right utility in Iowa, it could be a super huge value add to your ratepayers. And so excited to have Tammy Agard and Jeff Geertz with us today to talk. And at this time, I'm going to kick it over to you guys.
Perfect. Well, thanks. I'm going to go ahead and Jeff, would you like to say a few words while I pull up the screen?
I want to thank everybody for their time and participation this morning and your interest in Pay As You Save. The Iowa Economic Development Authority also believes Pay As You Save could really be a game changer for energy efficiency programming delivery in Iowa, and are really interested in seeing a utility pilot Pay As You Save here in the state, and are interested in working with one or more utilities and getting a pilot off the ground in any way we can help make that happen, including substantially helping you with any of the startup costs to make it happen. So we really think it's, as Jeff said, not only could be beneficial for the ratepayers, but we also think it could be very beneficial for the utility as well. And I think Tammy will get more into that and maybe share some examples today. And then on the second session on Wednesday with Marshall Cherry, you can hear from an REC manager who's been implementing PAYS for several years now, who can tell you firsthand about how it's positively impacted them and the utility and the ratepayer.
Okay, can you guys see my screen okay?
We can.
We're having one heck of a storm here in Kansas City right now, so just know that. It's like black outside and it's scary looking. So anyway, pardon you guys had a little bit of activity the last few days up in Iowa too. Scary times. All right, so what I wanted to do was just really jump in here and make sure that folks that are attending this get an idea of PAYS, at least at a high level, especially assuming you want to join Marshall Cherry in a couple days, and then we might, if you guys are still interested, continue on down your due diligence path to get some more speakers on. But so I want to just sort of highlight some of the benefits for, not just the utilities, but also folks that are, your customers. So one of the things that comes with a Pay As You Save program, especially when it's deployed in earnest, is that, utility investment in retrofitting homes with energy efficiency, when you remove that upfront cost from the participant and spread basically tariff charges out over a period of time, as opposed to having folks have to come up with that initial lump sum, it makes energy efficiency, for lack of a better way to say it, a lot more sexy. And this leads to an awful lot of folks wanting to take advantage of that offer. And so one of the things that can really help, particularly in small towns, you see that a lot more, maybe in rural areas, is that it does add to, jobs. It's not a huge job creator, but it absolutely does have a positive demand on local contractors, suppliers, and distributors. And so that's nice for your local areas. If you're an owner or even a renter, it actually can help by improving the housing stock. So whether we live in homes that we own or we rent homes that other people own, a lot of times, again, investments in energy efficiency are tough to make. It's tough when you're picking what you can, purchase. What is your precious money spent on? And again, energy efficiency is just not high up on the list. So it does actually help. Oftentimes, energy efficiency can address moisture issues. It can address helping a home be more durable and obviously valuable with those improvements. Healthier environment, that's another one, especially with duct systems. Leaky duct systems we find those all the time in the programs that we operate, and not unusual for folks to have mold or moisture issues or excessive dust, allergic reactions from the outside coming inside, or just funky air in general through leaky duct systems. So a healthier environment inside. Business case for utilities, I'm not going to steal Marshall Cherry's thunder. He's going to be spending a great deal of time on that in a couple days. And then also not just residential, down the road, we always suggest starting with residential pays, but there's absolutely a pathway for pays for small business as well. Again, small business owners are commonly in need of energy efficiency, but again, just like homeowners or renters, the competition for their money is high, and again, energy efficiency isn't necessarily prioritized. So just want to mention those bits. Another thing to talk about is what we call the donut hole. And so just across the board, if you guys think about it, a lot of folks that are in need of energy efficiency upgrades oftentimes are low income. And if there are enough resources in state, weatherization funds, a lot of low income folks have opportunities at least to apply for those funds and occasionally get served. And, it goes state to state. I'm not familiar with Iowa in terms of your waiting list for free funds, but Iowa, like other states, does have a free pathway if you're qualified and there's enough funding there. So that would be folks on the one side of the donut, if you will. And then folks on the other side who I like to, say are like in the top 5 or so percent, are folks who could write a check. They don't have a concern. They're fairly wealthy, generally speaking, and they're certainly not choosing things like, well, if I have to replace my HVAC or need to replace my HVAC, it's more like, oh, I think I want to replace my HVAC, or I want to invest in solar, or I want to invest in geothermal, where, money is not necessarily an issue. And or they have plenty of credit, space, and are not agnostic, not worried about taking on additional credit. So they might not have an issue of that first, payment, that upfront chunk of money to really make their home energy efficient. So that's the middle of the donut hole now that I'm leaving out. And that middle of the donut hole, this should really be an onion ring, quite frankly. You've got a small percentage of folks that are qualifying for low income, so they have a free pathway. You have a small percentage of folks who are, wealthy enough not to qualify or don't need anything for free. And then you have the rest of us in the middle, where we actually do have a lot of, competition for our dollars. Resources are precious. We're not excited about the opportunity, to go out proactively and, replace our HVAC system, which is a dinosaur, but it's still functioning, right? At least it's still working, and I don't have to come up with that, $7,000, $8,000, $9,000, which I just can't afford. That most of us live in the center, actually, of that donut hole, and so the vast majority of folks that are often passing or not able, because of competing interests for money, not able to participate in energy efficiency in a substantial way, suddenly have access, or at least a lot lower cost access to energy efficiency with the PAYS program, and they are not having to take out a loan. So that's just something to really think about when we're going through the remainder of these slides. So I want to dispel a few myths. Some of you may or may not have heard much about PACE. Some of you might be thinking PACE, which is often confused, and some folks might be thinking about a loan program. So I want to hit these highlights real quick and really try to point out the differences between PACE, which you see here on the left. So first and foremost—
Hey, Tammy.
Yeah, sure.
Real quick, can you make this full screen?
Oh, yeah,
Will that
sure.
mess
You know
up
what?
the screen record?
No, it shouldn't do that. Let's see. Where is full screen on here? Is my bar covering it?
So if you press that little thing on the bottom right.
Oh, here it is.
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah, there we go. Sorry about that.
No worries.
Thank you. Okay. All right. So all customers are eligible, and this means, yes, there's a pathway for renters. Now, I don't want to get too far in the weeds, and folks might have questions down the road on renters, but I do want to hit the highlights on a renter. So if a renter is the one paying the bill, so they're the one on the bill, the renter has to agree to accept a tariff charge, which has to be less than the savings that investment that the utility makes is yielding for that location. And the owner, or the landlord in this case, has to accept the upgrades at that location. So the only difference with a renter is it requires the homeowner's signature as well. But pays as a tariff doesn't follow the person. It stays at the actual property. And so it's fine for a renter who moves in, puts the bill in their name for a period, and then moves out. Again, the tariff charge is less than the estimated savings. And so hypothetically and theoretically and really, the cost to actually live there should be lower as a result of the prior, landlord and renters' decision to participate in the PACE program. So just keep that in mind when we're talking about renters. There is no credit score check or personal debt or property lien in a PACE program. This is a tariff. The utility already has this unique tariff authority. Like, for example, if a big storm was to come through and there was a bunch of, God forbid, problems like with a tornadic event or something like that, and the utility lost some power lines, or power was down for a while, and there was a lot of cost that the utility had to absorb to recover, its loss there. The utilities have the ability across the board to place a tariff. Some might need permission from, commissioners, but to place a tariff on the bill and get that cost recovery back, because the utilities are an essential service, right? And so that's the mechanism with which the cost recovery is paid back to the utility, or the secure investment the utility is making. It's because they have the ability to place that tariff, not a loan. It's attached to the meter, doesn't follow the occupant, has nothing to do with credit scores. It's not a lien, anything like that. So it's quite attractive for participants to go about a tariff to make energy efficiency upgrades. And it's also quite attractive once utilities really wrap their head around what this is. It's quite attractive for utilities, because you have the power to disconnect for failure to pay a tariff charge, just like you currently do. Whatever your current rules for disconnection are, just stay the same. But the bill on an annual basis has to be lower as a result of participation than the tariff charges that are placed on that meter on an annual basis. So the customer, in a PACE program, it's set up where it's called the 80-20 rule, where 80% of the estimated annual savings is what the tariff charge is based on back to the utility, leaving 20% of estimated savings in the participant's pocket. So while there may be a copay to satisfy that 80-20 rule, and I'll get into that later, the point being is that the participant should be earning a net savings immediately. The payments end if the upgrade fails and is not repaired, if it is not so let's talk about that for a second. So if an upgrade fails, which does happen, it's infrequent, but it does happen. If an upgrade fails, we have to do an investigation of that. That's part of our contract in the PAYS program with the participant and the utility. So we have to do an investigation of that as the operator and determine the cause. If the cause is the equipment failed or it had to do with workmanship vis-a-vis our contractor agreements with contractors, if it's something along the lines of that, then we follow the warranty and the workmanship promise, and the upgrade gets repaired at no cost to anyone. If it is participant caused, so let's say the participant, I don't know, had a cable guy come into their attic after we had gone up there and installed insulation, and let's say their duct system was up in their attic, and the cable guy went up there and sat on the duct system and smashed it or something like that. We take a ton of pre and post photos of everything done in a home, and these are all geocoded and timestamped. So if something like that were to happen, first of all, we would be to defend that it was not the cause. We would also be able to defend that it was not like that when we left or when the contractor left, pointing, the responsible party, letting the participant know who was responsible, or at least so that we weren't responsible for it. If it's something like that, the dog chewed the weather stripping around the door, participants added. Now there was 2 people in the home. Now there's, COVID happened. This was a big one for us for a while there. There were 2 people living in the home, and then suddenly the family doubled or tripled in size. The data that we collect on the front end to include, meter data that gives us a really good idea into the granular level of how much, energy is being used throughout the day for the prior 12 to 18 months is our baseline, and it's part of the equation of how we estimate forward savings. And so we can definitively go back and look at data, prior to up to the point where suddenly, the participant is not seeing the savings potentially, or, they're raising an alarm because maybe comfort changed in the home or something like that. When we do an investigation, we'll be able to determine at what point, increased usage happened, or, comfort failed or whatever, and then follow all the contract agreements per the terms of the contract to sort that out. But at the end of the day, if the upgrade fails and it is the fault of the participant, then the participant is responsible for making that repair. If the participant does not make that repair and were to sell the home or remove, or not remove but relocate, something like that, then the utility can absolutely and needs to repair it, because the next person coming in has to be able to pay that tariff charge, and the utility has to get its investment back, but the utility can extend the term to recover its repair costs. So it's a little bit more complicated. It doesn't happen very often. It's happened less than a handful of times out of several thousand upgrades to date. But I'm just letting you know that's sort of the pathway. So this is all opt-in. Customers always opt in. They're not, it's not, oh, you have to opt out. Just want to make sure this is 100% on a person's wholly, their decision. Again, if a participant decides to leave, whether they're renting or owning, the charges end in terms of that participant. They can move on, and this is not a loan. It does not follow them. So the cost recovery remains at the location. It remains in effect for subsequent customers at that site until the full cost recovery is complete. And again, if there was a repair that needed to be made and it was the fault of the participant or prior participant, the utility still needs to fix that. But again, they can just extend the tariff term in order to recover that investment. But we've got warranties in place, workmanship and all that. So we have to go through, and people, of course, so we have to go through our investigation and determine what the cause is, and then have the participant pay it. So we're only talking about in cases where they don't. Now that has happened one time. It happened in Roanoke Electric territory, and it cost the utility about $800 to fix the item, and they simply extended the tariff term for about 6 months and got their $800 back. So again, not very often, but this is a big concern for a lot of utilities, why I'm spending a lot of money on explaining these things. A lot of utilities, when they first hear about pays, might have a knee-jerk reaction to issues like this, which are understandable, but that's why I want to talk about these a little bit in length. So the investment that the utility makes in this energy efficiency on the customer side of meter, again, is secure because it is through the tariff charge. On-bill loan programs, PACE, none of those allow for disconnect for failure to pay. What in pays is a lower bill. That's kind of the stick, if you will. So again, since the annual bill needs to be lower, then if someone is disconnected for failure to pay, they're going to be disconnected for failure to pay their bill, period, because their bill is lower than it used to be. The cost recovery, again, is through that fixed charge. So just clarifying here, it's one line item on the bill. It is not like a loan. You might see a loan where there's a charge and a a portion of it is interest, a portion of it is principal, and then how many months left, et cetera. It's not broken out like that. It's simply a line item, not unlike a tax. It just says, pays tariff charge or whatever the name of your program might be, and it's fixed. It's one time. It's added to the bill, and it doesn't change. It is there for a specific term. So again, it's one line item, very easy to add to the bill. A lot of utilities think that's a problem, and then they go in and look at their bill, and they see they actually have the ability to fix, place a tariff on there usually anyway already for things like I mentioned, and so it turns out not to be a big deal at all. So these next three are common all across pays, on-bill loan, and PACE, and that is all of them are trying to remove this upfront cost because it is so much not something that people are interested in once they see the cost of significant energy efficiency upgrades. We just have too many things competing for our money. Residential and commercial customers are generally eligible with pays, on-bill loan, and PACE. And then the next one is where these next five don't happen in an on-bill loan program. In PACE compared to on-bill loan or PACE. And that is, there's no promissory note or debt obligation. Customers do not personally secure the investment in energy efficiency. They cannot follow them. In a loan payment is made via the utility bill payment. A loan payment, again, would show interest, principal, remaining amount. It's not like that. It is a simple one line item. In PACE, the customer agrees to a lien on the property. There is no lien in a PACE program. And then, of course, lastly, on the PACE side, the loan repayment is made via property tax bill. All right, so highlight. I'm going to move through the rest of this pretty quickly and open it up to questions. But again, just want to highlight. So PACE is evaluating the savings opportunity of the location, and it's considering the structure, in other words, the integrity of the structure. We're not going to go in and recommend that a utility invest in energy efficiency on the customer side of the meter on behalf of the utility. On behalf of the customer, if the roof is roof is leaking, or there's standing water, or there's mold or mildew inside the home, or there's asbestos in the attic, structural or health and safety issues present. If those are present, then we're going to let the participant know that we cannot move them forward in the program at this time, what the issues are, encourage them to get them fixed and come back around to the program, once they do, if they can get those addressed. Unlike a loan, of course, where we're evaluating the person's credit, income, assets, et cetera. PACE is tied to the meter. Obviously, a loan is tied to the property owner. PACE makes it available to all utility customers with no split incentive. So there's no renter-landlord conflict. If you are in an area where you have an awful lot of renters and you're trying to wrap your head around how do we possibly help those locations. In a loan program or PACE, there's often a renter-landlord conflict. We don't see that in a PACE program. Loans are only available to property owners, typically, for obvious reasons. A PACE program automatically transfers with notice. It's not notice as in will you accept. By the way, it's not will you accept this tariff charge once the change of hands happens. That's not how PACE works. It's simply a notice that there is a tariff charge. It's not asking somebody to agree to it other than the original occupant and or owner if it's a renter. Loans are generally not transferable. And then, of course, in a PACE program, you can disconnect for non-payment just like you currently can. But remember, customers have an easier time paying their bill. It's lower as a result of their participation in PACE. If it's not, we have to investigate, determine the cause, and rectify it. Unless it's participant cause. If it's participant cause, then they're on their own until they move. Non-payment, of course, in a loan triggers a full-on write down, and there's statistically unrecovered funds are at 3 to 5% loss rate. I should have mentioned on the disconnection for non-payment, there's a 0.1% loss rate, which is not even traceable, really. There is, I don't even know where that 0.1, no one under Utilities Watch or any PACE program that I'm aware of has ever been disconnected for failure to pay, because there's so many things built into the system to work that out. All right, so how it works. So we're mining the energy waste in single family, multifamily, municipal buildings, and commercial buildings. Do you have to do all of these at once? No. A lot of utilities start out with single family homes and then move on down the list. Local contractors are typically, these are the measures typically that are being installed. So it's HVAC and water heaters. It's insulation in the attic. It's duct and air sealing. It's a great opportunity to do demand response. If you've been toying around with that idea, it's a great time to do it. Participants are getting immediate average energy cost savings that more than pay for the upgrades. They get a more comfortable home. In a lot of cases, it's a healthier home, and they do not have to come up with at least all of the upfront costs. Again, they might have to pay some of them, depends on the upgrade. It's not uncommon for there to be a copay. And they also don't have to take on personal debt or have credit checks, et cetera. Utilities with PACE programs, these are active right now. Some of these that are light blue have turned dark blue, and there's a few more on here. This is about a 1.5-year-old slide, but we're looking hard at PACE in Oklahoma. Obviously, you guys in Iowa are doing some due diligence on PACE. Illinois is doing some due diligence on PACE, with ComEd close to jumping in. New Mexico is doing some due diligence on PACE or tariff on bill programs in general. And, so its popularity grows. We're doing a water program actually in California, water pays in 4 different utilities in the Bay Area. And California legislators just passed a requirement actually for California investor-owned utilities to do a tariff on bill program like quote unquote pay as you save. So it's got an awful lot of legs and growing. Customers really like it. And once utilities can wrap their head around it's not a loan and that their investment is secure, especially those that might benefit from avoided peak demand costs, et cetera, utilities are getting more and more interested in it as more and more data is able to be shown. All right, so how does it work in terms of really on the ground? So utilities are the ones that provide the capital, whether they provide it internally because they have it, or whether they go ahead and acquire it. For example, municipal utilities, especially rural designated municipal utilities, have access to really great USDA capital, 0% interest right now, 2% interest right now for a program called RESP, and then ECLIP. There is low cost or no cost capital, lots of it available with the federal government for utilities to invest in energy efficiency on the customer side of the meter. So again, whether a utility wants to access its own capital or borrow extremely low or no cost capital with great terms, there are pathways that exist. Green banks are another option. But it's the utility that's using their capital, again, loan or borrow, to invest in these energy efficiency improvements. You'll need to use a program operator, whether you use a program operator that's utility, or whether you use a program operator that's a partner of utilities, or whether you decide to partner with utility and help program operate on the ground level. There's a pathway there where you get the benefit of not having to go learn and reinvent a wheel. Depending on your budget, you can hire the whole thing done, or you can do it in part with us. Regardless, on a house-by-house basis, the contractor is paid for the services, but they are only paid with 100% remote QA, QC with 10% on-site. We use a lot of technologies, advanced quite a bit, so geocoded timestamp photos, etc. Test in and then test out using blower doors and duct blasters. We're documenting the the conditions on the front end. We're documenting the conditions on the back end of the upgrade, and no payment is made until we're positively sure that the upgrades they were made correctly, and that the savings estimate should absolutely be realized, barring a failure down the road. So once the structure gets upgraded, the tariff charge simply is applied to that metered location, and the utility gets its costs back over time, while the participant gets almost immediate bill savings. Business case, I'm going to skip this one. I'm going to do it real high level, but Marshall's going to talk about this a lot when he speaks to any of you folks that are joining on Wednesday. He's going to go over this business case. Now, notice on here it says reduce energy burdens. Pause for a second and explain something. In Roanoke Electric Cooperative, where Marshall Cherry is going to address you folks in a few days, it's important to note that their county, one of the counties they serve, is the second poorest county in the United States of America. About 50% of the homes that we go to in Roanoke Electric Cooperative Service Territory, we have to walk away from for deferred maintenance. And these are significant problems. Again, standing water, bad roof leaks, etc. I want to point that out. In a very poor area of the country, one of the poorest counties, the second poorest county in the United States, Ouachita's Electric Cooperative is definitely focused on not just energy efficiency and helping their customers, have access to energy efficient, products and resources. It's actually helping them remove energy burden. There is not nearly enough money in North Carolina to serve all of the folks who are quote unquote low income status, qualified. There's not nearly enough, and people are really hurting. And so Ouachita Electric has embraced the PAYS program to not just help folks in the middle of the donut hole, but also give an option at least for folks at the lower end of the donut, on the one side of the donut hole, low income folks, to access energy efficiency if so they choose, and pay for it as opposed to wait for it to come free perhaps one day. Anyway, Marshall's going to talk to you a lot about the business case for this type of program in a couple of days. There's also other things that you can think about once you really start to embrace the idea of a tariff on bill or inclusive utility investment or a PAYS program. And that is, there's beneficial electrification. There's things you can think about that you could add down the road. For example, if you've got folks on propane, or if you've got folks on natural gas, and it makes financial sense, certainly it does in propane, to switch from using propane heat, for example, to all electric. That's an opportunity for electrification. Ouachita Electric, Roanoke Electric Cooperative, these folks are investing in electrification of school buses. They're investing in on-site solar and doing power purchase agreements with some of their members that have a lot of land to avoid, peak demand costs and adding generation that way. It doesn't mean that you have to go that far, but folks that have been doing this for quite a while, utility-wise, have gotten real creative with how they're using the tariff and investing on the customer side of meter and things like this. So that is essentially the high-level overview of pay-as-you-save, how it works. Hopefully, I've dispelled a lot of myths, a lot of assumptions. But I want to open it up now 100% to you guys and just welcome any and all questions. The rest of the time is 100% yours. Thank you.
Yep, and I'll also say, if you for some reason don't have the ability to use audio, you can type your question in the chat and I'll make sure it gets read aloud. But hey, you're welcome to unmute yourself and ask questions at this time. Okay, I've got one question in the chat for you, Tammy. The question is from Joel Zook in Ames. He says, this is available as a turnkey program. What is the cost to implement / administer the program?
So it's a great question. And of course, the answer is going to be, it depends. It is available 100% turnkey. Right now, we operate this program for investor-owned utilities. All of them actually in Missouri are doing pays, and they have opted for 100% turnkey. As you can imagine, it's a little more expensive to do it that way, but we provide every single service on the ground level. That said, we also operate it for co-ops, and right now there's 4 co-ops that we operate the program for, and they're cost sharing the implementation. They have folks on their staff that are already doing energy efficient walkthroughs or house visits with high bill complaints or whatnot. So they already have staff that do energy efficiency sort of stuff for their utility. And so we've cross-trained them in how to go do data collection at the home. We have an app that they can follow. We'll train them on how to do it. They'll go do data collection for us, and then that data collection comes to us remotely, and we'll create the cost-effective pathway forward, kind of cost sharing the implementation cost of the program, because we're not staffing our own staff at the ground level. Instead, the utility's using their existing or new staff to do that. And then also contractor management. So if a utility wants to do a cost share situation with us where they're participating by doing the home data collection using our data collection app, then it makes best sense for them to also do contractor management. Though we will oversee the remote QA/QC function always for contractor upgrades. We will always quality assure the job remotely with geocoded timestamp photos. We can remote in to blower doors and duct blasters. Technology's come a long way with respect to our ability to remote QC. But things like, if there is a contractor having an issue in a home, or a contractor is, there's a customer who's, has questions or is concerned about something a contractor did, or let's say the contract, I'm telling you things now that I've heard of that happen. Like, the contractor was great, but the team smoked and they threw cigarette butts on the ground, and now the customer's upset, something like that. You guys locally would handle your local contractors to talk to them about that sort of thing, and just make sure they're providing excellent service. So and then the other part I want to mention about that, and I'm not evading the question of cost, but the costs are rolled into the work when it comes to someone actually going forward in the program. So the QC and QA costs are only paid if somebody goes through the program all the way to upgrade. And so we do get paid for doing our QA QC work, but that part is rolled into the job cost. So it is paid for by the participant, just like, you know, it's included with its HVAC system, or it's included with insulation or air sealing. So the costs we're really talking about either being borne by the utility totally because you're doing a turnkey, or being cost shared with us, are the front end. So these are rolling a truck out to the home and doing the data collection. If we're not doing it, you're not paying us to do it. If you're doing it, you've got soft costs there. If you've got current staff already doing things like this, but you're paying us to cross-train them initially during startup. If we're creating the offer, which is what we do when we have a good home, we have a sound structure and an energy efficient opportunity, then you're paying us to create that easy plan offer. If you want to deliver it to your customer because you want your person, let's say, that's doing the energy efficient data collection, to deliver that offer to the participant and go over it, have questions with them, you are welcome to use your staff to do that. If you do that, there is no cost because we're not doing that. If you want us to do that, there's a cost for that. And these are in the small hundreds of dollars for these things. And your costs are your own if they're soft costs. So the best thing to really do is, if you're interested in that, is I could do a one-on-one with you for 15 minutes and we could get down to the brass tacks of, you know, what it looks like if we did it full on, or what it looks like if you split it with us. But again, we're in the low hundreds. Now, and it's per job. Now, keep in mind that you also are able to add an interest charge to, or add the cost of capital. So if you're using your own capital, or if you're using 0% interest capital from the feds, which I highly advise you check into if you're in a rural area, you can charge interest on that. Now, I will say a quick caveat that the interest rate, that there's a sweet spot. You don't want to, this should not be used as an interest, a money-making program. It really isn't meant, to do that. You have a secure investment. But a 3% is kind of a nice sweet spot. And so keep that in mind. So let's say you're borrowing 0% money, charging 3%. If someone does go forward in the program, tends to pay for soft, or can pay for, even turnkey costs, depending on, what level of participation. If you're really going to push this program, really market it, really get a lot of folks on board, then you can get even turnkey costs paid for. It just really depends on how aggressive you are. But there's always going to be startup costs, and that's where Jeff Gertz, maybe I'll kick it over to him for a second, but startup costs can be quite high. So this is the IT infrastructure needed to get this program going up and working from a software perspective, because a lot of this stuff is based on technology. And so I'll just let you know that costs for that can range anywhere from, if it's just one utility doing this program, a startup cost would be right around $200,000. What Jeff's interested in, and I'll pass it over to him to get into the weeds, but what Jeff's interested in is helping a handful of utilities or more, if they want to go ahead and do a program like this, is to cover those upfront costs for startup IT wise, so that we're removing that. So Jeff, I'll let you speak on that.
Sure. Thanks, Tammy. Yeah. So the Iowa Economic Development Authority, we have a couple of programs where we think we might be able to provide assistance with those startup costs. The conversations we've had with Tammy and utility are, we could look at just partnering with one or two utilities and attacking it from that angle and having those startup costs for those two utilities. Or if we knew there were several utilities interested, we could look at setting up some sort of a statewide PACE program which, by because of the quantity would be a lower cost per utility for us for those startup costs. But we're open to either option at this point, because there's a lot of value that we get as a result of those startup costs on the technology side, and a lot of just the intellectual property that utility has already developed over the years, that we don't have to recreate, and all of those various contracts and documents and all that stuff. Those are already available, so there is some value to that we could help cover as well through helping with startup costs. Tammy, I don't know if you wanted to talk a little bit about Paysport or some of your reporting capabilities that would be available to the utilities as part of those startup technology costs.
Yeah, sure. So we do have quite a powerful platform. Pretty much talk about Suite. That's a turnkey IT platform, and what that does is whoever's managing the program from the utility side, or responsible for doing the reporting or whatnot. And I'm not talking about day-to-day stuff, but I'm talking about reporting to your own, whoever you report to. There are just an endless amount of data that we routinely track, and based on your desire, we'll put on your dashboard whatever links to whatever reports that you are going to find most valuable for you. But there is nothing, we don't actually track everything, so we can get into minutia of what you would have on your individual dashboard, but it's all there, plug and play, ready to see. The data collection app itself is nuanced for your particular market, your particular kWh costs, your contractor network. The program tracking platform has down to the granular level of detail for every single customer/participant of yours that would elect to go through the program, down to and including exactly what was done at their home, exactly what the offer was, exactly what, which contractor did what. It just depends on how many clicks you want to go to dig down into that minutia level of detail. But what you have is a nice summary on a dashboard at any given point. We design it to where it's a easy one-click dashboard for you to look at what's happening on a daily, weekly, whatever often you want to see it, nuanced for you. And then again, if you are doing reporting, like let's say you're using USDA dollars and you need to report out, we can build it right there so that we're tracking it from the beginning on your dashboard, and it's a one-click report. So so the IT systems that we put in place really make this program one that we can co-deliver with utilities, or we can do turnkey. Either way, you have access to your dashboard, by the way. Just saying that, if you were doing more of the program management on the ground level with contractors and doing data collection, then you would want to have more granular access. But either way, you'd have granular access. It's just, how far out we need to build it based on what your needs are. At a later time, I can absolutely pull up the data collection app as well as the program tracking platform if folks are interested.
Tammy, if a member is interested in taking the next steps, is it okay for them to email me and then I'll put them in touch with you for maybe a follow-up meeting? Does that sound right?
Oh, sure. Sure, that's fine. Yeah, no problem at all. No problem at all. Happy to help.
Great.
And you're welcome to share my email as well, and folks can just reach out to me directly if they have a question. I mean, this is what I do. Help folks with due diligence all the time. Pays isn't necessarily for everyone. Sometimes it's a no-brainer and it works, and other times, particularly if you have low energy costs, if your kilowatt hour charges are 7 or 8 cents, it's going to be difficult to get cost-effective offers out there in front of folks. If you aren't paying demand or aren't saving from reduction on demand, if you're generating and you've got you know, you're long on power, there's circumstances where pays doesn't make sense, but by and large, in most cases, it does, for folks that are not generating. But you can reach out to me with any question you have, and I'll be happy to answer.
Perfect. Any other questions from this group? All right, I think I'm going to end it there then. If you think of any questions, you're welcome to email them to me, and we'll make sure we answer them during the second webinar this week. The second webinar this week, again, will be on Wednesday, April 12th from noon to 1 p.m. And Marshall Cherry will be there, the president and CEO of Roanoke Electric Cooperative, who is a PAYS participant and has some information and experience to share with us. Thank you to everyone who attended this webinar, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thanks,
you. Everybody.
Thanks, Jeff. Yeah, IEDA is looking to partner with you. Thanks for your interest.
Thank you. All right. Stop the recording.